Thank you for joining us for our Agri-Pulse Washington Week in Review. I'm Spencer Chase, joined as always by Agri-Pulse Senior Editor Phil Brasher, discussing the week that was, agriculturally speaking, in Washington, D.C. And the big news that's going to affect Washington, D.C. agriculture this week did not happen in Washington, D.C. It happened in the offices of a certain company that operates in Germany, St. Louis. Maybe you've heard of them. Bayer and Monsanto announced a merger earlier this week, and that certainly got some things set in motion on Capitol Hill. There was a hearing that was already scheduled for next week on consolidation in the seed and chemical industries in the Senate Judiciary Committee. I imagine this will come up at that point. But Phil, consolidation and mergers in this business sector is really nothing new. But from a policy perspective, from the halls of Capitol Hill buzzing about it, what changed this week?
What's changed is you have one more, and you have a whole series of fertilizer and also in the entire chemical seed sector consolidating. That's what's really big, and I think that's what's really drawing the attention of the Senate Judiciary Committee, chaired by Charles Grassley of Iowa. Has a little interest in agriculture himself, and so all of he is going to be bringing in next week all of the major top executives from each of these some of the chemical and seed companies. And none of the mergers is bigger and is going to have more public interest, obviously, than the deal between Bayer and Monsanto. So that's we'll have a hearing next week. I mean, Congress is not going to get involved in that. They're going to probably at best draw some. I'm sure the Justice Department will be paying attention to the testimony and what the members of the committee themselves say. What's the big news as far as agriculture here in Washington is really all going on behind the scenes. Congress is in just this month, and then they're out until the election.
And so, Phil, with that, things that are going on behind the scenes, we did see some movement this week on TPP. Maybe movement is not the best way to categorize it. We saw some comments from Senator Orrin Hatch saying he thinks TPP can happen in the lame duck session. We've seen some other comments from some other folks that are saying the opposite. And there are a lot of farm groups in town this week, namely American Farm Bureau Federation, the National Pork Producers Council, United Fresh also in town lobbying on behalf of TPP, National Farmers Union in town probably not lobbying on behalf of TPP. But a lot of these farm groups are in town this week pushing for a lame duck approval of the Trans-Pacific Partnership.
Right. Well, Hatch was quoted earlier in this week as saying that yes, he thought that the TPP could get done during the lame duck after the election. That was big news because the Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell, and House Speaker Paul Ryan have both been saying that TPP wouldn't be done in the lame duck. And that's important to remember. McConnell, Senate leader, has actually been saying that for months now. So this was a big shift, at least from Hatch, who's chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, which would have to approve the TPP enabling legislation.
And some interesting things that came out of, I attended a luncheon yesterday at the National Pork Producers Council, and they had some staff there very confident that TPP had the votes for a lame duck passage, which is a little bit contrary to some of the things that I believe Paul Ryan and, House Speaker Paul Ryan and House Ag Committee Chair Mike Conaway have kind of said some things to the contrary, that they're not sure if the votes are quite there yet.
Well, it's been over. This campaign has, the presidential campaign has just really affected the politics. People on Capitol Hill pay attention to what the voters are telling the pollsters and what the candidates themselves are saying. And if you've turned on a TV and if you've watched any speech that Donald Trump has made in the past year, he has not missed an opportunity to attack the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And the poll numbers, it's been remarkable when you look at drill down in the polls, both in the exit polls and in the primaries, and since then, how much Republican opposition and uneasiness there is with trade policy. So there is that, but as you mentioned, the pork producers, the American Farm Bureau is gearing up to make a big push, trying to generate a lot of emails and phone calls, and I'm sure there'll be more visits. They had folks in town this week, and we'll be having more as the fall goes on. So agriculture with some exceptions. You mentioned the National Farmers Union, the rice producers would be another one, are going to be making a big push this fall to try to get a vote on the TPP after the election.
So stay tuned for some developments on the Trans-Pacific Partnership, because we saw some changes of opinion this week after things were pretty seemingly set in stone that it was not going to happen this year, and there wasn't a whole lot of public comments made to the contrary. So stay tuned for some developments on that front. But while we've got you, we also want to talk about some things that are happening, particularly in the Senate chamber with Senator Pat Roberts trying to make some movement happen on a child nutrition bill.
Right. This bill has been stuck in the Senate since January. It came quickly out of committee. It would extend the reauthorized child nutrition programs. That's a school meals program. It also includes the WIC program for women and with young children and pregnant women. It provides a little more flexibility to the schools in terms of the school nutrition standards that the administration proposed or imposed under the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act, which is expired. Senator Roberts has been working on getting some funding issues cleared up on that. It's a possibility it could be on the floor as early as next week. This could possibly tee it up for maybe being included in a big government-wide funding bill at the end of the year.
Mm-hmm. And Phil, quickly before we let you go here, obviously the big news that should and is going to come out of September is a continuing resolution to avoid a government shutdown. Quickly here, where do things stand as we sit here and record this right now?
Well, there's still a lot of negotiation and again work behind the scenes to figure out to get agreement on what should be included in that. One of the things that's certain to be included is funding for the to battle the Zika virus. There's some other things. There's farm groups and the bankers have gotten together. They've sent an appeal in to congressional leaders, appropriators, to also include some authorization so that USDA has some flexibility to cover this backlog of farm operating loans that they have, plus get some additional money down the road for the new fiscal year for farm loans. Mm-hmm. So that's one of those issues. It's very important and being pushed and worked on behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of interesting kind of behind the scenes developments, as we mentioned kind of at the beginning of this video, and that's really going to hold true here for this week. It ended up being a little bit busier than usual, busier than we thought it was going to be here for the Agri-Pulse staff in Washington, D.C., but a lot of stuff going on and a lot of coverage was posted on Agri-Pulse.com. I'd encourage you to just take a look and see some of the developments that happened in Washington this week, and check back with us on Tuesday, because that Senate Judiciary Committee hearing on the ag mergers is sure to yield some interesting commentary at the very least. But I think that's going to do it for this week. So for Phil Brasher, I'm Spencer Chase. Have a good one.